Hi, my name's Rhonda Taylor. I'm a heterosexual Caucasian woman, and my pronouns are she and her. I welcome you today to HR Social Hour.
Hello, welcome to a very special episode of HR Social Hour. I'm your host, Wendy, and with me today is Anne. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Wendy. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm excited because we are going to be chatting with Rhonda Taylor, who we know through blogging and all sorts of fun stuff. But she has this awesome story that we felt needed to be told, and we felt it deserved a special episode of the HR Social Hour.
It's like, wait a minute, what? I am excited to be on the HR Social Hour with you, Wendy. Usually you and I do the HR Wonder Women, and I've been a guest on the Social Hour, but it's pretty cool to be here as a co-host.
Yeah. So it's a social hour, but it's going to be more, it's going to have that Wonder Woman feel because it is you and I doing it. And the focus of our chat tonight with Rhonda is a very strong feminist vibe because we are talking about Rhonda and her experience in women's hockey in Canada. She has a book coming out about it. She has been at the forefront of it. And so I'm just super excited about it. And even so, we are going to still do our identification because I think that's important that we continue to normalize that part of our conversation. So I am Wendy. I am white, straight, cisgender, female, Christian, and non-disabled, along with many, many other privileges, I am sure there. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And you, Anne?
My pronouns are also she, her, hers. And we talk about this all the time. There are a lot of different ways that we can identify in any given context. And for the purpose of this show together, I am a white, straight, cisgender woman, non-disabled. Yeah, that's who I am, and that's the lens that I am bringing to this conversation. And with that, I am super excited to be introducing to you Rhonda Taylor. Rhonda was one of the founding pioneers of women's hockey in Canada as it was reborn in the early 1980s. She was a founding member of the Ontario Women's Hockey Association and the first female to sit on Hockey Canada's board of directors, where she fought and won the right to hold the first vote for a woman on the council. She was also the first director of the Female Council, now a subset of Hockey Canada. In 1982, she was chair organizer of the first Women's Canadian National Hockey Tournament. This tournament was a turning point for women's hockey as it changed the stigma against female hockey players, empowered young girls to partake openly in the sport they loved, and gave elite women a chance to vie for a national title like the men. In 1983, she persuaded 9 of the 10 members of the Female Council to agree to eliminate body contact from the women's game in Canada, a policy which would eventually spread to women's and men's leagues across the globe, making the game safer for everyone. That is an impressive and really exciting bio. And so, Rhonda, welcome to the show. You mentioned some of your identity in your cold open. We know, when Wendy and I do HR Wonder Woman, we talk about the fact that intersectionality matters, and so identification matters. Just so for the purpose of this show, is there any other way that you want to identify, any other lens that you want to mention that you're bringing to our conversation?
I never thought of hers, of adding that. And I also have a unique, I am somewhat disabled, and it's one of those hidden diseases or symptoms, I should say, and I suffer from chronic pain from a spinal cord injury that I experienced in 2004.
And we were just talking about that as well, as those invisible disabilities are hard to pick out. You don't want to call out people on those for fear of seeming, quote, rude, but we do need to talk about them. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, Rhonda, because the more, like I said earlier, the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the more others can see someone like you up and out and living a full life.
Oh, exactly. And I have a disability sticker for my car, and, I get out of my car and people look at me as if why have you got one? Like, they become very judgmental, and they don't realize that I walk fine. But as soon as I put 5 pounds into a grocery bag, it throws my spine out. And the chance for severe pain to build up, the chance is much higher. And as you say, it's one of those disabilities that people can't see. And to be honest, people really don't understand.
That is truth. So, Rhonda, we're here to talk about your book for first and foremost, but we know you because of your connection with HR, and we are the HR Social Hour and HR Wonder Women. So, tell us how you got into this field.
Well, after working in hockey and juggling all the volunteer organizations, HR was a natural step. And I was picked up by a consulting firm to work with them, and we were doing a lot. It was just the starting of the on-site facilitation programs that was occurring in the staffing world. And I started working in that field, and overnight, all of a sudden you became aware of labor laws, you became aware of payroll practices and hiring techniques, and talent acquisition became my strength. And before you knew it, 3 years later, I opened up my own consulting firm and became recognized as the automotive HR queen across North America.
So that's awesome. So you have reinvented yourself numerous times.
Oh, exactly. And I was just speaking with my co-writer of my book today, and I was saying you need to always be changing. Being dynamic is being progressive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We always want to grow. So let's touch on your book for just a second, and let's just talk about women in sports. Tell us a little bit about your story. Don't give the whole book away, but give us a little teaser to get folks curious about your book that's coming out soon.
Okay. Yeah, great. Well, it starts off, when I was a child back in the 60s, when there really wasn't much women's hockey. And, I grew up in an area that had a park with a rink. And, being the true Canadian girl, I had a toque, and I would put my hair up in the toque to go play in the rink. And I would, the players, the captains of the teams would pick the players. And I always was thrilled when I got picked high in the rank. And it was only after the selection process was over that I would let it be known that I was a girl, because there was already this prejudice that girls can't play hockey back then. And then later, I became active in women's teams at a senior A level with Kingston Red Barons, which we actually wrote a letter to Charles Schultz. And he enabled us to use his characters in the promotion of our team. So I played senior hockey for about 10 years, went off to university, and after that I became an administrator. And that's where I got into the OWHA and started working with Hockey Canada. And in the bio, you said all the great things that I did, and that's the period of time in my life that it occurred.
I think that's great that you were at the forefront of a lot of this. In the States, I've done a lot of work around Title IX, which people unfairly categorize as girls in sports. The Girls in Sports Amendment. And, but we're still seeing a lot of discrimination in sports, a lot of bias, especially against women's sports. And your work with the Women's Canadian Hockey League really helped start, move that needle a little bit. So tell us a little bit about what it was like to be the first woman on Hockey Canada's board of directors.
It was amazing. And something right now is, although we're saying, I was in Canada set up the template of the development of women's ice hockey. The United States, they actually followed the same process that Canada did. And thanks to Title IX and some of the money that was put into sports, I truly believe the United States bypassed our program. And accolades to them. But, sitting at Hockey Canada level, it was an uncomfortable seat. There was a lot of old, stale, pale males. They were almost twice my age, and they basically did not approve that I was sitting there, and definitely in their eyes, I was not a peer. And then, of course, I went looking for the vote, and it just became it became personal when we started discussing the right for the women to have a vote. And, it was very difficult for the men to grasp that, heaven forbid, the women might have a vote in the national game, that could negate their vote. And they were not real happy about that election process going through. But thanks to, Sport Canada, and the women's movement in general, they knew at the end of the day what was right. But, when that vote meeting occurred, there was so much emotion in the room that the president of Hockey Canada came to me, and his name was Murray Costello, and he says, Rhonda, the history books are never, ever going to believe that this discussion went on.
I love that you were at that table and you were taking on the stale pale males. I love that so much.
Right? Right. And
sorry, guys.
I think, it's funny because we, Wendy and I talk a lot about the concept of a seat at the table, but you literally had a seat at a literal table, right? This wasn't a metaphor.
Absolutely. And, the interesting thing is, and I so much in behind this pay equality and the women's rights, because it's so important. But what people need to step back and realize that in 1960, we did not even have a seat at the table. We did not even have a voice in the women's sports movement. And now we do have a voice. And so we have come somewhat, we've been progressive, but obviously we need to ramp it up.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important, right? It can be easy to see how far we still need to go. I think people fall into two different traps. And one is look at all that we've done, so we can just sort of rest on our laurels because we've come really far. Or they can say, look at how far there is to go and get completely discouraged. But I think when you do both, when you say we've made real improvement, there's real progress that's happened, that is the encouragement that we need to keep going. And that's where you get the energy for the fight. Yeah, but I appreciate that you sat in that seat when it was so uncomfortable and there were no other women sitting there.
Hard to be the only. And so, we've taken that on. And, again, it kind of comes back down to this is not a zero-sum game. There's enough room for all of us to play hockey or play whatever and get paid for it.
Right.
Oh, exactly.
So I think that in a lot of ways, sports is sort of like a microcosm of the rest of society. What in kind of taking that to the next step, when you look at women's sports today, what is giving you hope?
Well, I think what's giving us hope is that we're being able to measure in the women's program. It's very hard in society to see the progressive steps, but in any sport, whether it's hockey or baseball or tennis, you can step back and say that this organization is a reflection of the big picture. So there's just so much more hope. But we're living in the world that 5% of the sport directors are female. We need women to step up and play a role in the leadership. When we think about sports, everybody thinks about speed and strength, and that women's professional sports are not simply getting the recognition that maybe the skill level reflects. But you have to look and realize that the women's sports program has to develop their own image, and that we also have to step up and realize that 80% of the consumers in society are women, and women need to embrace women's sports. Therefore, the sponsors will step up, and when the sponsors step up, the media steps up, and it all boils right down into the membership of the microcosm, the women supporting other women.
I think that's a theme that we've heard throughout HR Wonder Women, Anne, is women, we need to be better supporters of women. I hate that we have to say that. But I think, one of the things that you said, Rhonda, really struck me is that, women's sports, we need to have our own brand, our own thing, because I always think back to, women's basketball versus men's basketball, because that's pretty big here. And when we watch the university teams, our women's basketball team has consistently, since we became Division One, SDSU, I should say, I'm not part of them anymore, but so SDSU's women's team has consistently gone at least to the Elite Eight in the national tournament on a regular basis. Yet the men's team, which goes and gets kicked out in the first round when they do go, gets to go play in a tournament in the Bahamas over Christmas break.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And my husband and I are just like, wait, what? What are my season tickets paying for? So it's one of those things that we still have, that the women are more skilled, but the men have that brand.
Exactly. And I just want to bring up the LGPA that went on this weekend.
Yes.
The young lady, who won, she played 4 rounds and did not have one bogey. No man in the FedEx Cup did that. So she is such a better golfer.
Yeah.
And yet she walked away with $337,000. Rory, who won the FedEx, he walked away with $13 million. And to add, salt to the insult, we had Dustin Johnson, who was 10th in the FedEx. He walked away with $400,000. And at the end of the day, who was the better golfer?
Exactly.
So the man in 10th place walked away with more money than the woman in first place, who played a better game than all of them.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep.
So
is there not something wrong with our media and our sponsorship that we are such a patriarchal society, and I find it so frustrating because women control so much of what's going on in their households, but they're not being strategic in helping the women's programs.
We're all part of, and that's part of it too. We talk about the lens that we look through things, and we all have that patriarchal lens that is hard to look through and see, look past that and see something different. And so there's so many of us that we just take the easy way out, and we're just going to buy what we always bought regardless. And Anne and I were talking about the challenges with that this week as well. No, do I want to shop at Walmart? Not necessarily, but when the other choice is a local grocery store that won't let the Girl Scouts sell cookies but will let the Boy Scouts sell popcorn, hell yeah, I'm going to give my money to Walmart.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Love it. That's such awesome conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know that I am left with the hope that you see in women's sports right now.
Yeah, and I think what's really neat is when we take a look at what happened at the NHL All-Star game, when they let some of the women step up, and I think Kendall Schoenfield, she turned around and she won the puck control competition. She actually beat the man, but because they were playing, it was Decker. Sorry, because the hashtag was Pay Decker,
Okay.
And she actually beat the man, but because she was an exhibitionist, she didn't qualify for the money that Cooper put up. So the hashtag ran rampant, called hashtag Pay Decker, and the next day Cooper stepped up and paid her.
Good.
Awesome. There's the hope.
There's the hope.
Okay.
Well, and
now I see the hope.
The hope that I have, Anne, is that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have talked about it. We just said, oh, that's just the way it is, or that's what the market says. But the market is speaking up. I think social media has helped that a lot. So I think there's some hope. It's slow.
Oh, exactly.
It's glacier paced, but there's hope.
And the nice thing about it is that although in my book I'm talking about my experiences in the women's hockey, but it encompasses the women's movement. It encompasses where we have come from, and my book is not meant to be a vanity book at all. It's letting letting the young women of today know where we've come from, know the obstacles that we encountered. And, from there, we're passing them the torch and saying, it's your turn to run faster and to run harder.
Exactly.
I love that.
Awesome. All right, passing the torch. Here we go. All right, well, Rhonda, it is now time for everyone's favorite part of the HR Social Hour, but we are keeping our female twist on it and using the questions from the HR Wonder Women because, again, we are elevating female voices tonight. But we do like to talk about networking because that is the whole point of what we're doing is connecting people and helping folks find new and other female voices that they need to hear. So let's talk a little bit about networking and how it's helped you in your career and what's been effective for you.
Well, it's amazing. Even now, with my book and with my career, you learn what the trends are. And you also, and Wendy, you know this, I also take the opportunity in the networking sessions to educate, to teach people that it's okay because this is how it is in other places. And networking is so much more than just, passing out business cards. I use it to re-endorse my brand, who I am. And it's interesting. Again, your brand changes. It always changes. I spoke to the young lady who was my co-writer in my book, Demby, this morning. And I said, Demby, you don't have it up in your LinkedIn account that you are a co-writer in the book. And she says, but I'm not so sure that that's the direction I want to go in my career. And I said, it doesn't matter. It's part of the fabric. It's a part of who you are. And networking allows for that communication to occur. And it's been great for me.
I love that idea. So we hear a lot from our guests about networking being about making connections, and that, for sure, that's huge. But I love hearing you talk about networking is the chance not only to like spread your brand, but to bring that authenticity to your brand.
Exactly.
Right? You change and you grow over time, but you present who you really are in that moment, not some fake version of who you want to be that you're trying to sell. Yeah. I appreciate that. So tell us about some women that you follow to keep current.
I tend to follow the CEOs of the world, but I do really enjoy following Melinda Gates. I think she's sort of my hero because she's brilliant, but she is her head is always on a swivel, looking and evaluating where she can have some impact next. And she just makes the world a better place. And I would love to be able to have that recognition on my tombstone.
I don't think anyone's said Melinda Gates yet, so she's a good choice.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so Rhonda, what is your favorite movie that features a strong female cast?
Well, I have two. One is The League of Their Own, because I think that the women's hockey movement back in the 1930s, 40s, paralleled very much the baseball movement. And from my research, the women's hockey movement was almost not a freak show, but it was close to it because the men coached the teams, the men marketed the teams, and the men drove the programs. And right up to remember League of Their Own, you got a fine if you appeared in public without your lipstick on. Now, do you think that's a woman's rule?
No.
Not.
No, absolutely not.
And then my other one is $1 Million Babe.
That's a good one.
Because in that story, she played a sport that wasn't a traditional women's sport. An interesting side, and it's in the book, my girlfriend took me to this movie about 4 or 5 months after I got hurt. Oh. And in the book, I talk about, I got in the car after $1 Million Babe, and I bawled. I cried. And my girlfriend, who was a nurse, she said, "Are you okay? Are you in pain? You know, what's wrong, Rhonda?" And I said, I just could identify with the girl who wanted to end her life, because I had just finished having neurosurgery, 6 months of trauma in a trauma facility, and I had to grieve the life I had, the life that I had before I got hurt. I did 3 short triathlons the summer that I got hurt. My 50th birthday, did 3 short triathlons. I got hurt playing hockey that winter. And after that, the doctor said, you know, like, you're going to have a hard time playing your sports again. And they recommended not to because of the chronic pain I lived with. And it was a grieving process. And I guess when I went to see the movie, I had not come to terms with my grieving process yet. And it was pretty raw, ladies. I felt sorry for my girlfriend.
There's a couple of things I think to that. One, you know, when I said earlier, you reinvented yourself multiple times. Like, that's to be able to reinvent yourself, like really out of the ashes, takes so much courage, right? To be able to do that. And I think that part of that courage is to like walk through that grief and not try and hide it. And the final thing I'll say that I think about that is just like how great when a movie can do that for you, like release something in you that you haven't even known that you need to let go of, or that you haven't looked at yet. So that's really cool. And I think that I will look at that movie differently, quite honestly, hearing that story.
Well, I hope you do. It's amazing, you know, what it says.
Yeah. Tell us about a favorite female musician or band.
My favorite one is Madonna, because Madonna, when she created her brand and she walked the high wire, she went in a direction that nobody expected her to go. And if you read her story, you know, she worked hard. She was up at 4:00 in the morning going to her fitness workouts. And, you know, she's now got kids. Just an amazing, she's just amazing that she, you know, was able to pull off what she did.
And stay true to herself.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Talk about reinventing yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Many times. Oh. How about favorite female protagonist in a book or favorite female fictional character?
You know, it's funny. I have a little bit of trouble with that. You know, it sounds really corny, and I'm going to go to the Bible.
Okay.
I always loved the story of Joan of Arc. She was a woman who stood up for her values, and she lost her life because of it. Because of the time. I think that could be you and me if we lived back in that era.
Right? You know, would you be strong enough to stand up for what you believe in
and give your life
for God sending some saints to talk to you? Well,
yeah. I bet you never heard that one before either.
No, that one has not come up. Not come up.
Not yet. No, you've had some really, really strong answers.
Yes.
We ask for like strong women, and you've given them to us.
Yes, you have.
It's been awesome. So our final question is, what do you like to do outside work? And we like to ask this because we think it's important for us to be seen as whole people, right? So obviously sports is something that you're passionate about, but tell us something about you that that people may not know, or that people may find surprising. We live a pretty simple life. I have my dog and I walk my dog for hours. And that's part of my therapy. It's my mental therapy and it's my physical therapy is walking a dog. And it's really great because, Wendy can attest, I walk hours in trade shows and, not a lot of people, know of my disability. I spoke about it in my book, and people are now learning about it. If you watch me,
I have a unique gait. I have muscles that aren't working properly, so I've learned to walk in a way that is a Rhonda walk. And and people don't know that, and I have to work at it. It just doesn't come natural. My hobby is probably walking and keep putting one foot in front of the other.
I think that's a great way to do it.
Yep. It sounds like that is how you live your life, both physically and figuratively.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And what a perfect way to wrap up the show. Rhonda, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been just a fantastic conversation. I think the next time we're all together, we'll go grab a drink and just continue the conversation because this, and we could go on, and this is just a taste. John and I have talked about that too, that we don't want to give away everything. We want people to go out and find you, Rhonda, and talk to you more about it from their perspective. So having said that, tell our listeners how they can find you, either on social media or other ways they can get in touch with you.
Sure. I'm pretty visible. I have a website. It's www.Rhonda Lehman, Leeman, Taylor. The reason being, most of my hockey career was in my single days. Please feel free to reach out to me. I am on Twitter, social_Rhonda, and I'm on LinkedIn. So, and Facebook. So don't hesitate to reach out to me, follow me, and don't just follow, be engaged. Be engaged with me.
Definitely. And I'll put all that in the show notes so people can easily find you from there.
I was wondering, Rhonda, did you want to tell us more about your book that's coming out?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
How people can order it, where we can buy it, when it's coming out, all that stuff.
Well, thank you. The book is coming. Book is being launched October the 5th. You'll be able to buy it through Amazon. Interesting enough, I still had 2 publishers that were looking at the book, but unfortunately, they're moving too slow. I wanted my book out for Christmas. My book is about the women's movement, encouraging people to move forward, and it's $12.99. I'm not out to make a fortune on it. I'm out to encourage us to make a difference in today's society.
Wonderful. And I will put a link to order your book as well in the show notes. Thank you for the reminder, Anne. I appreciate that. And now, Anne, how can people find you?
Okay. So I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook, but the place that I am most often to be found on social media is on Twitter. You can find me at Anne Tomk, ANNETOMK. And I would love to connect. And like Rhonda said, don't just follow. Let's be engaged.
Definitely. And y'all know you can find me on Twitter. I am Windle93, or my blog, mydailyjourney.com. Daily is D as in dog, AILEY. And the 4th Sunday of each month, please join us, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, for the HR Social Hour Twitter chat. Now you're listening to this, so don't forget to rate, review, and share the episode with others to spread the word about HR Social Hour and HR Wonder Women. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Rhonda. So appreciate the conversation. Cannot wait to get your book and read it. Thank you, as always, Anne. And for the HR Social Hour half-hour podcast, this is Wendy. Now go tell your story.